Hello, I'm Gilbert Cruz.
And I'm Joumana Khatib.
We are both editors at the New York Times Book Review, and this is part 2 of our fall book preview. Last week, we talked about Dan Brown and Thomas Pynchon and Kiran Desai and a bunch of other big fiction books. This week, we are looking at several of the major nonfiction titles coming out over the next several months. How do you feel about our last episode, Joumana?
So, listeners, I haven't listened to it yet.
Just feelings. Just
Feelings?
you walked out feeling great.
I walked out feeling excited. There's objectively a lot of good stuff coming.
So what's the first thing you're going to... Do you even know?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, of course I know.
Go
I
ahead.
am nothing if not prepared. Just as a big old asterisk, I'm going to be talking about a lot of memoirs today. Memoir, if we want to use the Kris Jenner preferred pronunciation.
I don't think we do.
Okay, it's funny. All right, so we're going to start with a name that's probably very familiar to a lot of you who are listening. And this is the latest memoir by Elizabeth Gilbert of Eat, Pray, Love, notoriety. This is a big shift for her in a lot of ways. So this is called All the Way to the River. And luckily this book is already out. This is a pretty wrenching personal account. And she's written about this relationship in various forms before, but now she's put it together in a book. So her best friend, Raya Elias, she realized that she received a terminal cancer diagnosis when she was in her, I think, late 40s, early 50s. And that was the kind of shock that both women needed to realize that they were in love with each other, much more than just best friends. And so Elizabeth left her marriage, moved in with Raya. They had this incandescent but also very tumultuous romantic relationship that, of course, is just amplified by the stress of knowing that Raya's life is going to end. And just to add another complication, both of these women were grappling with addiction and they were in recovery, but I think that also the intensity of their relationship elicited some of their worst impulses. So Raya actually had an amazing life. It sounds like she was born in Damascus. She came to the States when she was a kid. She didn't know any English. And then somehow she became this punk musician in the East Village, and she was living in the grunge era, and she struggled with a years-long heroin addiction. And Elizabeth, she's been very upfront about her own addiction problems, mostly with sex and love and romantic attachment. So this is pretty gutting because this is a huge loss. And one thing that I love reading about addiction, this is a thread in contemporary literature that always interests me because I think a lot of the ways that we talk about it tends to be very trite. So anybody who's approaching it with a fresh angle or with something new to say, I perk up and take note.
And Elizabeth Gilbert is really one of the kings of modern memoir.
We might say queen.
I could say that, but
monarch. One of the monarchs, a memoir monarch.
She is a memoir queen, and that is All the Way to the River. I want to talk about a book that also came out this week. It is a big piece of literary biography, literary nonfiction. It is called Dark Renaissance, The Dangerous Times and Fatal Genius of Shakespeare's Greatest Rival by Stephen Greenblatt. We love a long subtitle.
We sure do. And, we do love the founder of New Historicism here at the Book Review.
Do you want to tell?
Do I want to? Well, okay. Stephen Greenblatt, of course, is best known, I think, as the Shakespeare scholar, but he's a really prolific academic. And I think one of his more enduring contributions to the humanities is this idea of New Historicism, which really encourages scholars to look at all types of historical and literary records when analyzing literature. So not looking at artistic works on their own terms, but looking at them in a broader context. This seems totally reasonable to me. I can't believe somebody had to come up with this. That's why I'm not an academic, but thank you, Stephen Greenblatt, for your eminently reasonable approach.
Do you think you would be good at coming up with terms?
No.
Like marketing terms? Because this is academic marketing. in a sense.
What's funny, this may be apocryphal, but my understanding of this is that he coined the term New Historicism because he had a bunch of essays that were loosely linked by this idea, and he was just desperate to publish them in a collection and just came up with it, and it stuck.
Like I said, marketing. Everything's marketing. Stephen Greenblatt is, as you say, he is very well known for being a literary scholar. His book that I think people maybe most identify him with is a book called Will in the World, How Shakespeare Became Shakespeare. And then he won a Pulitzer for his book, The Swerve, which is a book I have not read, but our own Dwight Garner in 2011 reviewed it extremely positively. And now he's got a new book about the person that is not named in the subtitle. Who is that person?
That is Christopher Marlowe, the playwright, the scoundrel,
poet,
the eminently enigmatic, lost to history, brilliant upstart young man.
The spy? Question mark? So Christopher Marlowe, murdered at the age of 29, young genius. Greenblatt is trying as best he can to put together a life of this person based on the records that we have and then possibly some records that we don't have.
He's making a lot of inferences, but he's been immersed in this context. I'm talking about Stephen Greenblatt for so long that, like, if anybody's going to make these intellectual and almost imaginative leaps, I trust him to do it. He's writing around a cipher, and that's hard, right? Must be said.
So this is Dark Renaissance. I'm not going to say the subtitle again. Stephen Greenblatt, just out now. Joumana, over to you.
Okay. As promised, I have yet another memoir and another one that's already out. So this is Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy. And she is, of course, the author of The God of Small Things, which is a novel that, honest to God, I think was one of the more profound reading experiences I had this summer before I went to college. I should probably reread it. And she's also a political and social activist, very outspoken. And she has written a memoir that is focused on her mother, who died 3 years ago in 2022. I've said this before. I've written about my affection for single moms in literature. They are one of literature's great enduring subjects. And it sounds like Arundhati Roy was really given quite a subject in the fact of her mother. And she has this quote, she'll say it better than I possibly could. She has this quote about the project where she says, "Perhaps a mother like mine deserved a writer like me as a daughter. Equally, perhaps a writer like me deserved a mother like her. Even more than a daughter mourning the passing of her mother, I mourn her as a writer who has lost her most enthralling subject." So that's Mother Mary Comes to Me, Arundhati Roy, out now.
I have a book that I know is going to be read by a lot of people. I cannot claim, with all due respect to its author, that it has the same literary merit as Arundhati Roy. This is a new book by Matthew McConaughey, the actor and cowboy poet, I guess. His new book is called Poems and Prayers. Comes out September 16th. So his last nonfiction book, or his last book, Greenlights, do you remember this? It was
sure do.
It was published in October of 2020, that first pandemic year, and it was just a huge bestseller. I think it still is today. This was a book of reflections, fortune cookie wisdom, maybe is the way I'm thinking about it. He kept diaries for decades, right? And he brought all that together, went into the desert, so he claims, for a couple months, lived without electricity to write this book, came out of the desert like Moses with the tablets with the book Greenlights. And so many people read it, and so many people bought it. And now he has a new one. And he has described this one as, quote, "an inspiring, faith-filled, and often hilarious collection of personal poetry and prayers about navigating the rodeo of life and chasing down the original dream, belief."
I didn't realize I was in a rodeo.
He is from Texas. I think he sees all things through the rodeo prism.
Okay.
Life is a rodeo.
Noted.
Yeah. Are you going to read Poems and Prayers?
Nope.
Okay.
But you know what I might read?
What?
I'm really interested in this one. This is by John J. Lennon, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea. He is not related to Sean Lennon, Yoko, John Lennon. He is a really fascinating guy. He is a journalist who is incarcerated and currently serving a sentence of 28 years to life for murder, drug sales, and gun possession. And during his incarceration, he's written for the New York Times Magazine. He's a contributing editor at Esquire. He's written for The Atlantic. And he has a totally unique level of access to the U.S. prison system because he lives it every single day. So his new book is called The Tragedy of True Crime: 4 Guilty Men and the Stories That Define Us. He is one of the men, of course, but he also extensively interviewed 3 other inmates who were serving time for murder or manslaughter. And each of these men had a very different kind of arc. So one of them was Robert Chambers, who I think was dubbed by the tabloids the preppy killer. He became this notorious tabloid celebrity because he strangled a woman in Central Park. And he had this very clean-cut look to him. There's also Milton E. Jones, who as a teenager, he was 17, he was involved in a burglary that went very wrong, and he ended up involved in the killing of 2 priests in Buffalo. And then Michael Shane Hale, who is a gay man. I believe he's still incarcerated. And when he was in his early 20s, he killed his much older lover, whom he said was abusive. So they're even just in that kind of like précis, you can see all the different socioeconomic factors, cultural factors that contribute to these man's stories. And of course, Lennon talks about his own life and his own circumstances that led him to jail. He was raised in Sheepshead Bay and Hell's Kitchen and housing projects by a single mother. And he's unsparing. He's totally unsparing about his own life. He has a remarkable level of access with the other men whose story he tells. And this book also doubles as, I think, a very clear indictment of the media frenzy that some murders can become. And he, of course, has such a unique perspective on this. It's worthwhile, it's thought-provoking, and it's certainly a unique position to be writing from. So that is The Tragedy of True Crime: 4 Guilty Men and the Stories That Define Us by John J. Lennon. And that is coming out at the end of September.
That sounds fascinating. We're talking on a podcast, and one of the things that has been true about the podcast format for a very long time is that many of the, maybe at least until recently, many of the most popular titles were true crime podcasts. You look at cable channels that are devoted to the stuff. You look at all the things that are popular, or many of the nonfiction titles that are popular on Netflix. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to read it from his particular perspective. That one sounds good.
Yeah.
I will go next because there's no one else in the room. I'm going to talk about a book by Jill Lepore. Jill Lepore is a historian at Harvard. She also writes for The New Yorker. If you know her name outside of The New Yorker, you might know her 2018 books, These Truths, A History of the United States, big modern history of this nation. And her new book, We the People, A History of the U.S. Constitution, looks at the Constitution, looks at the amendment process to the Constitution. Joumana, without looking at the document here in front of us, can you say what the last constitutional amendment was or when it was?
I was so sure you were going to ask me to say semi-quincentennial.
Well.
Does that count as a bonus point?
I think this book is being put out now, as well as a couple of other books I will mention, because of the forthcoming semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. That was not the question, though. The question was the last amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
I don't know.
Okay. It was 33 years ago. It was the 27th Amendment. The last actually important constitutional amendment was in 1971. This was the one that lowered the voting age from 21 down to 18. This was related to the Vietnam War, I believe, and the fact that we were sending all these young men off to war who couldn't even vote. So we have this, as Lepore writes, this amazing document. It is amazing in part because it is able to be amended. It's able to be changed, but we haven't really done anything with that feature of it for more than half a century. As she writes, since 1789, there have been more than 11,000 constitutional amendments proposed.
Now, as somebody who has dedicated his life to journalism, primarily as an editor, does that surprise you?
The number 11,000?
I feel like I see that in a Google Doc on a given day.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of amendments.
I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, that's We the People, History of the U.S. Constitution by Joe Lepore, out September 16th. So it's coming right up.
Okay, I have a biography of one of my favorite writers, Muriel Spark. So this is Electric Spark, The Enigma of Dame Muriel by Frances Wilson. This is coming out also on the 23rd of September. And I know there is a healthy constituency of New York Times Book Review readers who really love Muriel, because I've heard from them in the comments, in my email, whenever I write about her for any amount of newsletter. I love you guys. I'm so glad you appreciate her. But just in case you have never read Muriel, she is this deeply enigmatic, sphinxy, a little bit remote, intellectual Scottish writer. She's best known for the slim but mighty novel called The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. You might also have heard of Memento Mori or A Far Cry from Kensington. All of her novels are just unbelievably acerbic and funny and just wicked. And so it's been a while since we've had a biography of her. And it dawned on me when I was reading about this book that I know so little about her formation as a person and a writer. And just to give you a little teaser of everything that her life entails, not everything, just a teaser of what her life entails, we have divorce, madness, murder, espionage, poverty, blackmail, affairs, revenge, and a major religious conversion. And if I had heard that, not looking at a Google Doc or just being plopped into this chair with no knowledge of anything, I would say, ooh, that sounds like the element of a Muriel Spark novel.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I'm a slow convert to the literary biography because I've said on here before I don't love biographies. That's still true, but there have been a couple this year that have begun to tempt me into changing my mind. This is a once a decade thing that happens.
Remind me why you don't like biographies.
I don't know that there's like a cogent reason. I think it's a reading experience problem. I think a lot of the ones that I've read have prioritized things that I would not have prioritized had I been in charge of the biography. And that's the problem of being a longtime editor.
I see. If I had written this book, I would have done something different, and therefore...
Yeah, this is the curse of being an editor specifically. I don't think you can ever really take it off.
I love literary biographies.
I know.
That's not surprising, of course.
No, it's not. But I mean, this is like a big oversight on my part.
Certainly, you can like what you like. There's nothing that says you should be reading literary biographies. There's lots of other books to read out there. But I think, as you say with this one, once in a while, it's worth checking them out. What was the book again?
So that is Electric Spark by Frances Wilson, coming out September 23.
Welcome back. This is the Book Review Podcast, and I'm Gilbert Cruz. I'm here with Joumana Khatib, and we are talking nonfiction fall preview, books that are coming out over the next several months that we are looking forward to.
What do you have for me?
I'm going to talk about two memoirs coming out on October 14th. The first one I will sell very briefly because I think if you're in, based on who has written it. This is called Joyride, a Memoir. It's by Susan Orlean. If you know who she is, you know who she is, right? She's the very well-known New Yorker writer. Her book, The Orchid Thief, was essentially adapted into the movie adaptation. The Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman movie starring Nicolas Cage as twins. And Joyride, her new book, is a writing memoir. It is a memoir of how she became one of the most popular writers of nonfiction that we have right now. So I'll mention that briefly because I feel like I don't need to sell it too hard. The next one I'm very interested in. This is Next of Kin by Gabrielle Hamilton. It's her second memoir, I believe. Her first one, Blood, Bones, and Butter, came out in 2011. I read it at the time, and in refreshing myself with what it was about, I just remember how evocatively written it was when it came to her childhood, having these big roasts on the bank of the creek, in rural Pennsylvania, where she grew up with her family, her French mother, her father, who worked on Broadway sets, and so always had this sort of New York City hippie artistic scene over at their house. Those scenes of her in her early childhood are extremely memorable. And then it goes into how she started her restaurant. This restaurant, Prune, which was a very big deal when it was open. I think it was the first place I ever had bone marrow on toast.
Not to be confused with beef tallow.
I don't even know what beef tallow is. I feel like you mention it and I just smile and nod because I don't want to admit that I don't know what it is, but now I am. You can tell me off mic. So she opened Prune. She became this extremely well-known chef and restaurateur.
Yeah, restaurateur.
Restaurateur.
Oh my gosh, that is such a personal bugaboo of mine when people say restaurateur. It's restaurateur.
Restaurateur. She's also a wonderful writer because she got her MFA from the University of Michigan, right? And so she wrote this incredible first memoir, Blood, Bones, and Butter, in 2011. And when we reviewed this book at the time, our great critic at the time, Michi Kakutani, wrote the following, quote, "There are some odd gaps and puzzling emotional elisions in this memoir. While Miss Hamilton says her mother taught her, quote, everything I know pretty much about eating, cooking, and cleaning, and describes her mother as being the very heartbeat of the most cherished period of her life, she abruptly notes in the middle of the book that she had not seen her mom in 20 years. This is a big hole in the middle of that memoir. And now, in this book, we get to know her mother, right? She reconnects with her mother after not talking to her for decades, 20, 30 years or something like that. So she talks about that situation, her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her two brothers who both tragically died. She's an incredible writer. I just have high hopes for this one.
I haven't been to Prune in a long time, but Prune,
It's closed now.
Well, I think I keep hearing rumblings that it's going to reopen. I think she's doing some private events down there. We'll see. So we're going to stick with the sort of Midwestern memoir beat to the extent that Gabrielle's is a Midwestern memoir. All good things start in America's heartland. So this is by Beth Macy, who is really an incredible investigative journalist. She's best known for Dope Sick, which has also become a Hulu series, Raising Lazarus. She really tends to embed herself in a struggling community and diagnose what's going on. And her work, particularly on how the opioid epidemic has completely hollowed out a lot of middle America, is her calling card. This is quite different. This is a personal memoir. This is called Paper Girl, and it's coming out the beginning of October. And it's set in Urbana, Ohio, which is west of Columbus, which is where I grew up, close to Springfield. And it's like a middle-class suburb, although Macy herself didn't grow up wealthy. And actually, she gets the title of the book from her adolescent job, which was the local paper girl, which is how many journalists started out delivering papers.
What is a paper girl?
It's where you deliver the printed paper to your neighbors.
All right, I was just doing that for the sake of our listeners who may not.
For anybody who's under 70 that's listening.
Who may not remember.
Okay. I also was a paper girl, but mostly my mom.
What? You were?
I was. Yeah.
For what newspaper?
For the Upper Arlington News.
Your mother drove you around and you threw papers out the window or what?
Yeah. And sometimes when I had too much homework, she would help me stuff the papers in the bags and deliver them.
Wow.
I know.
Really
so really I've been
embedded in this business since the beginning.
Been an ink-stained wretch since longer than I can count. So to go back to my paper girl in arms, Beth Macy. So as she's built this career looking at what's going on in America, looking at what's going on in these communities and getting to know them inside and out, she had this moment where she thought, why have I not really looked hard at Urbana the way that I have these other cities? So 40 years after she left home, she is really taking that hard look at what the hell has gone on in her hometown. What used to be this middle class, harmonious very community-driven town has now calcified, and there's a lot of economic and social strife. The support systems that were there when she was growing up have totally collapsed, and frankly, it sounds like it's become a bit of an angry place. So I think this is the ideal mix for a book like this. This is somebody who knows this town inside out. She has the reporting chops to really get at what's going on, and she's just a really lucid and enjoyable writer to spend time with. So that is Paper Girl by Beth Macy, coming out October 7th.
I jumped ahead a little bit when I talked about the last two memoirs, which come out in mid-October. I'm going to go back very quickly to late September when a book will be released by Jeff Chang. Jeff Chang is the author of a 2005 history of hip-hop that I remember loving 20 years ago now. Jeez Louise. That book was called Can't Stop, Won't Stop. His new book is Water, Mirror, Echo, Bruce Lee and the Making of Asian America. It's a book about Bruce Lee. In 2020, I remember watching a pretty good documentary that was part of ESPN's 30 for 30 series, and that was called Be Water. That was about Bruce Lee. And of course, hopefully everyone knows who Bruce Lee is because he was one of the great movie actors of the late 20th century. He died at the age of 32. He died in 1973. And he was the first big global martial arts movie star, right? You have people now like Jet Li and Jackie Chan. They all live in the shadow of Bruce Lee. And Jeff Chang, who is a pop culture historian and an academic as well, is locating Bruce Lee's influence in the world of American pop culture, but also how it relates to how we see Asian Americans in our society today. So I'm, as someone who grew up watching Bruce Lee movies, is very interested in this one.
I have yet to see a single book about a movie star come out that you haven't read. Which is amazing. I mean, how are we not ourselves, right?
We can only be ourselves.
That's right.
What do you have?
Okay, this is going to be a wild card. I have no idea what to expect from this book. This is A Book of Lives by Margaret Atwood, the Margaret Atwood. She has never written a memoir. She is that refreshing counter to like all the 32-year-olds putting out memoirs. She's 85. I swear to God, there are like probably 1 in 100 people in their 30s who have something interesting that like book worthy that's happened to them.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I do.
I look forward to aging and having something to say. Then I'm really going to get going. So she is a welcome change to that trend. And because she's 85 and has had a huge influence on a lot of our cultural material and has lived long enough to see some of her more dystopian works begin to resemble reality in the eyes of a lot of her fans. And I have a lot of affection for this woman, right? I just do. She gave an interview to, I think it was Vogue, when they announced that the book was coming. Because of course her publishers, I have to imagine that her publishers had been goading her to write a memoir. Like, come on, please. People are interested in you. We know it's going to sell. We know it's going to be good. And so apparently her first response was like, oh no, that would be so boring.
Okay.
I believe she thinks of it that way.
It's nice to be humble.
It is nice to be humble. But then it sounds like she thought about it. She went to whatever windy mountaintop where she goes to think.
Canadian mountaintop.
Yeah. And she said, I thought of my own life, the stupid and the big, and how all of that affected the writing of the books. That's useful. And so I think the resulting book is going to weave the events of her own life. She really had an almost forlorn childhood, very bohemian in rural Canada. And so she takes the events of her life and pairs them with the cultural impact or like the inflection points of her biggest work. Now, I think that is an example of cultural materialism. But if any of my former professors are listening to this, I'm sure you'll let me know if I'm wrong.
Please reach out to Joumana.
Directly through the usual channels.
And let her know that she's wrong. I'm sure you're not. I think we should do a little history corner right now. I have several books. I know that you have a World War II book that you want to mention. So these are...
Are you trying to humble me? Is that why you said humility is so important?
No, I don't think anything I could say could ever humble you.
Oh,
we're going to talk about a few books about American or world history. Very quickly, we're going to blaze through these. The first is The Great Contradiction, The Tragic Side of the American Founding. This is by Joseph J. Ellis. And this looks at the writing of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution through the lens of what the author considers, as the title indicates, to be these amazing contradictions in American historical life. That we had this revolution based in the ideas of freedom, and yet when we founded this nation, we allowed the conditions for slavery to thrive and for the U.S. to go and take the land away from the native people that have lived here before. So The Great Contradiction, Tragic Side of the American Founding, that's Joseph J. Ellis. David McCullough has a book coming out. Yes, David McCullough is dead. God rest his soul. He has a posthumous collection of speeches, essays, and the like coming out. We all know David McCullough. He wrote biographies of Truman, the Wright brothers, Teddy Roosevelt. He wrote books about the Brooklyn Bridge and the Panama Canal. There are people who love David McCullough and have read all his books. So there's one more coming out. It's called History Matters. And then finally, I'm going to talk about The Wounded Generation, Coming Home After World War II by David Nassau. David Nassau, I think, is most famous for his 2006 biography of Andrew Carnegie? Carnegie? It's Carnegie Hall, but I feel like people say Carnegie.
Yeah, but I always wonder if they're pranksters. Once again, if you know how to pronounce it, listeners, please let me know.
If you went to Carnegie or Carnegie Mellon, please write.
It's definitely not Carnegie Mellon.
Write Joumana directly. So I don't know if we've talked about this, but we live in an age in which so much of what counts as storytelling, books, movies, and TV is about trauma. I feel like that's been true for a very long time. Parul Sehgal, our colleague, who was then our former colleague, who is now our colleague again, wrote an amazing piece about this at The New Yorker called The Case Against the Trauma Plot, which analyzes this trend in fiction storytelling. This book, David Nassau's new book, is about real trauma. It's about the way in which the terrors of World War II affected American veterans who brought that trauma home and then had to live with it and spread it throughout their communities and their families and the like. So that's The Wounded Generation, Coming Home After World War II by David Nassau. And you have one.
I do.
For History Book Corner here.
I am nothing if not famous for my broad appetite. This is called Family of Spies, a World War II story of Nazi espionage, betrayal, and the secret history behind Pearl Harbor by Christine Kuhn.
Love a long subtitle.
So, this is a story that she didn't really learn until well into adulthood. So this is really what I would call like a genealogical detective story focused on her grandparents who were German and they were sent by the Nazi regime to spy in Hawaii. And they were pretty instrumental in helping lay the groundwork for Pearl Harbor. So this talks about their life in Hawaii, which was pretty extravagant and comfortable. And of course, they played a huge role in a pivotal tragedy in world history. And Kuhn's grandfather, as it turns out, was the only or one of the only people ever convicted for the bombing. And then her father denounced his family and eventually served for the U.S. in the Battle of Okinawa. And so she's made sense of this history. She's done the work. She's gone into the paper trail to put it together. It's an incredible story. I think that these really personal accounts that actually tell you about the lives of the people who were involved in these big marquee events in world history can add so much to our understanding. It's just a wild story.
That is a crazy story.
Mm-hmm. So that is Family of Spies by Christine Kuhn, and this is coming out November 25th.
I have left one book until the end. This one comes out in mid-September. It's called Replaceable You, Adventures in Human Anatomy. This is by Mary Roach. Mary Roach is the master of writing books, very specific science books that are full of weird and incredible facts that if you read them, you will quote to many other people after reading her books. So her latest is about, quote, the quest to recreate the impossible complexities of human anatomy. She's basically writing about the history of attempting to create replacement body parts, replacement noses, replacement skin, hearts, breasts. She takes us to a hair nursery. She takes us to a Xeno pigsty in China. All sorts of weird stuff. All her books are quirky and kooky. This one seems like it'll be no different. And I've left it to the end because I have a quiz for you, Joumana. Another one.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
The quiz is you have to tell me whether or not the book and the subtitle I say are real Mary Roach books.
Okay. All right.
Ready?
I'm so ready.
So I'm going to read it to you, and then you say that is a Mary Roach book or that is not a Mary Roach book.
Did you bring an air horn?
I did not.
Okay.
We really need more props.
We need one in the office.
We need more props.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. First one. Gulp. Adventures on the Alimentary Canal.
That is a real Mary Roach book.
Correct. Ding.
And it's about the digestive system.
It is.
And you'll never think about Prilosec the same way.
Okay. Next one. Ripped. Journeys in Exercise and the Science of Body Optimization.
I don't think that's real.
You're correct. That is not a Mary Roach book. Okay. Next one. Sniff. The Science of Scent and the Future of Smell.
Yep, that's a real one.
That is not a real Mary Roach book.
Oh, my God. Oh, God, the confidence. All right, fine. Let's plow ahead.
You are so confident. Next one. Stiff. The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers.
That is actually correct.
That is a Mary Roach book.
Yes. Yeah. You know what's amazing?
What?
Is that one thing that I learned from Stiff is that cadavers actually make like the best crash test dummies.
Is that something we do in our society?
And she made the very good point, which is if you are planning on donating your body to science, you need to be very specific.
I don't think there's a box for that on my license.
This might be other than organ donor. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
We'll talk offline.
I have to go reread Stiff.
Yeah.
Which is a real book written by Mary Roach. Is this one Bonk, The Curious Coupling of Science and Sex?
Yes, it is.
That is a real Mary Roach book.
Bonk.
Next one, Scratched, The History of Itchiness and the Future of Itchy-less.
No.
That is not one. That was a bad pun.
Oh, you tried. You tried.
I tried.
Honestly, I mean, subtitles are so out of hand.
We love a long subtitle. Galumph, The Curious Science of Grace and Clumsiness.
No. What were you doing? Yeah.
This is work.
Listen, it shows how much you love something when you parody it. I can tell you had a lot of fun with this last night.
All right. Packing for Mars, The Curious Science of Life in the Void.
Just because you've given me wrong ones, now I think this is correct.
This is correct. This is a real Mary Roach book. Okay, two more for you. Yell, Yipping, Yelping, and How Funny Sounds Have Guided Human Evolution.
Oh, God. What's the next one?
No, we're doing this one at a time.
I've actually lost all perspective. You know what I said about
it? You're taking too long.
Okay, I'm going to say no. Not a real Mary Roach.
It is not a Mary Roach book. Go with your gut.
Yes, which I should know because I've read the book about the digestive system. Okay, last one.
Last one is Fuzz, When Nature Breaks the Law.
Oh, yes, and this is a really good one. It is a Mary Roach
book. That is a real Mary Roach
really
book.
Good.
Mary Roach, wonderful author. I'm actually looking forward to Replaceable You.
She's great. Oh, she's so great.
And that's it. That's all we have. We have talked about a bunch of nonfiction books. There are many, many others that are coming out over the next several months. We just could not fit them all into part 2 of our fall preview podcast. Joumana, you're excited for the fall?
I am. It's the best season. So many good memoir and other things coming out.
Histories, memoir, novels.
A veritable cornucopia.
As always, thank you for being on.
It's always a pleasure.
That was my conversation with Joumana Khatib, part 2 of our fall books preview. This one about some of the most notable nonfiction books coming out this fall. I'm Gilbert Cruz, editor of the New York Times Book Review. Happy reading.